TPR.
Finally, Hafsa Khawaja, you find yourself on the podcast. बस मुझे ये feeling थी मुझे कि ये कभी ना कभी ये हो जाएगा. So how are you? How are you doing? You're back in Lahore? You were out of Lahore for a few days.
Yeah, I was out of Lahore for a few days, but I am back to Satan's arm, which is Lahore. Yeah, that's sub.
अच्छा अच्छा नहीं हालात हालात इतने खराब हो गए थे लाहौर में कि हफ्सा had to come back, to fix shit. So let's set up who Hafsa is, why is she here, what has she done to deserve this punishment. Hafsa is somebody I know of the internet, and I am somebody she knows of the internet, but she's also a very educated person. Unfortunately for her, it lands her in these sort of situations. तो हफ्सा आप जरा बताएं आप क्या करती हैं, क्यों करती हैं, and why are you here?
So I teach history and political science at LUMS. I've been doing that for the past 2 years. Before that, I was in the US. I did my master's in South Asian Studies at Columbia.
Yeah.
And I immediately came back and started teaching over here. So I'm teaching undergraduate students of all levels when I'm also politics of South Asia and Pakistan studies.
Achha.
So that's mainly what I've been.
Why did you study South Asian Studies at Columbia? Like, why did you choose that?
I think I became interested in history. I was interested in history for a very long time, but I had a minor in history in my undergrad, which was also at LUMS. As you can say, anchored to LUMS many years.
Yeah.
I wanted to pursue that on a higher level and get the training, which is usually not available, undergrad bachelor's mein.
Acha. So this has been history was also a thing in LUMS. Have you always been interested specifically in the history of the region and Pakistan?
I think I have been. I think initially I wanted to do pol sci, but I realized, it's really not my cup of tea. It's too statistical now. It's too quant oriented, and I've always had a C- in math since grade 2. Yeah, Pakistan mein rehte hue, I think you increasingly realize that politics and history they're just everywhere. So to make sense of that, I think I started getting even more, inclined towards both of these things. And at the end, I just had to make the decision that history is it.
Achha.
I don't think pol is something I want to do.
Is this something that you have been interested in bachpan se?
History, yes, because I was a kind of nerd that would get history textbooks to class mein assign hoti thi, photocopied, so I could have my own copy to keep at home. So I think that was there since a while. It was also very encouraged by my parents. So I think it was a trajectory that just didn't come out of the blue for me. It made sense.
Why were your parents encouraging it? Are they also history buffs? Aapka family background history mein?
My ammi is she's always been a housewife. She's a homemaker. My abbu was in government service, but he was very interested in history, reading books generally. So that gave me sort of a person to converse on these topics with since a very young age. And credit to him, he always treated me like an adult in these conversations, which I think really motivated me to read more, to think that my opinions are worthy, and also do take that forward into something that's more disciplined and structured in terms, for example, a bachelor or master's program.
Yeah. Acha. So then history, and then LUMS, maybe you did history and then Columbia. So I have often messaged you about this situation, and especially पिछले कुछ दिनों में जो पाकिस्तान में बड़े unprecedented हालात हैं, आपको पता है. I've often found myself on the internet, I don't know why, being very skeptical of people's understanding of Pakistan ki history and Pakistan ke masla. And there seems to be, to me, a big disconnect in the Aam Awam and their perception of Pakistan ki history. Now, a big part of this could be that people say that, hamare Pak studies ki textbooks are, perhaps skewed, and there's like a perspective to them, and chalo theek hai. Har mulk mein hota hai. Pakistan has a strong enforced national identity kind of thing also. Okay, there is a
Yeah.
correct national identity that people need to think of when it comes to Pakistan. You grew up in Pakistan. I did not. तो मैं तो आया भी जरा बाहर से ना. What was your एक तो feelings about history as it was taught to you based on pre-lums, during lums, and then when you went to Colombia? Was that
Yeah.
something that you noticed also? Were you always aware of it?
I think I don't recall much from, for example, the earlier grades, वगैरह, grade 1, 2, but you knew certain things to be the cornerstone of Pakistan. Two
Yeah.
nation theory,
Yeah.
हिंदुओं के हाथों जुल्म हुआ, all of that, Urdu, Islam, Muhammad bin Qasim.
Yeah.
So they were, very identified themes that you were very well identified with Pakistan. Okay, this is it. And I think that sort of changes slightly when you're studying O and A levels. O levels primarily because उसमें Pak studies होता है. उसमें you have these books written by Nigel Kelly, गोरे लोग. I think they're gore, yes.
Yeah.
So usme, I mean, honestly, there's no position they're taking, but they're just giving you a very, straight, cut out, dry thing. Ki ye hua, ye hua, ye hua. Jin has 14 points and Pakistan was made, then this is the politics, so on and so forth. Nothing too detailed, nothing too complex. It's just like narrating a timeline of Pakistan's creation. I would often read otherwise too. So coming to LUMS teaches Pak studies in a very different way.
Acha.
It's not necessarily very chronological. It's more thematic. So there are some major overarching historical themes or themes from the contemporary times studied in that course. What was interesting to me at that time was that it was quite astounding for a lot of students. Because Pak Studies at LUMS is a core course and you have to pass it to graduate.
Acha.
Because again, it's taking action. So Pak Studies to aapne karna hai aur assignment bhi karna hai, even at university level.
Oh, I thought it was just
so that
OA levels se pehle ka.
No, it you have to. And at least in LUMS, you cannot graduate if you failed either of these courses. Okay. So they're a core course.
Right.
So everybody has to take it, whether they're from the sciences, the law school, the business school, humanities. So those classes have everybody. People from different backgrounds, people from different regions. But I think what was really shared among those classes, despite these different backgrounds, was that reading Pakistan studies in that manner after years and years was something that people really struggled with. And it's something I see even when I'm teaching students, which is that suddenly, obviously it's understandable also that you're asking students to not just, rethink what they've been taught for the past, 8, 9, 10 years, but also be critical about it. Right. Why has this history been written this way? What does that say about your identity right now or the problems right now? And that's a big ask. Because पूरे आप मतलब grade 1 से आप पढ़ रहे हो, two nation theory, this and that, and suddenly, you're supposed to interrogate, did all Muslims, for example, support Pakistan? Because no, they didn't. Or what about Pakistan's first law minister, Jogendranath Mandal, who was a Dalit who, got heartbroken from Pakistan and had to leave. So it's a difficult conversation that's continually, sort of carried on in this course. And I've realized over time while teaching it up, you have to be very patient and empathetic in dealing with that discomfort. Right. Which is very natural to students, right? Because they read anything that's critical. For example, one of the things I keep encountering when teaching Aisha Jalal and her bargaining counter thesis and whatnot is that, students immediately jump to the conclusion, she hates Pakistan. Right. She hates Pakistan. She does not like it. Why is she doing this? What does she mean? So navigating those conversations to also redefine what critical histories mean is very important, which is when you say that you're being critical of Pakistan's past, it's not that you're, dismissing everything or saying everything's wrong. Perhaps a better explanation is a critical appreciation of the past, right? Right. You see it for the strengths, but you also see it for the pitfalls and what went wrong. But that discomfort is there throughout. I think last end while those sessions may sort of eases over, but it's something that stays with them. And my job as an instructor, I always feel like, is to walk it through that discomfort to maybe a more clear understanding of what history is. I'm not there to tell them, this is what you're supposed to think, but just to show them different histories and different tools of approaching that.
And do you think people who take these classes, do they get the message?
I think For me, teaching has been a very two-way street, which is that no matter how much effort you put in, a lot of it also depends on the willingness of the students
Right.
to
Of course.
learn.
Huh.
Some of them do find it very difficult.
Huh.
For them, it's just a course to get through.
Right.
A lot of them also just don't want to go through that discomfort of revisiting everything and rethinking it.
Huh.
But there is a good chunk of students who gets genuinely engaged, who are very committed. कि अच्छा, what is it that we're learning? They have a lot of very good questions to ask. And also they're very expressive in their discomfort. You know, मुझे समझ नहीं आ रही इस चीज़ की, what does it mean? Just, you know, relating it to what's happening. So I think there are all kinds of students, but one of the most meaningful things about teaching Pak studies at this level is that there are definitely segments of students who are very genuinely invested in the process. Why is it that we're investigating histories? Why is it that we need to rethink Pakistan studies critically? And I think it's been very rewarding for me to especially see students jinka pehli class mein, you know, they were very defensive about what they'd studied and you know, were not willing to let go of it. But towards the end of the course, they had a different way of thinking, which is not to say they agreed with everything that was taught, but they were definitely thinking in different directions as opposed to one state monopolized direction of what Pakistan is, what is Pakistani identity, so on and so forth.
Pakistan is the state monopolized thing also. Achha, but just before we go to that, is there pushback that you ever get or that you have seen when you were a student? That people are like, "Nahin, ye to galat hai," and that doesn't change.
A lot.
Achha.
A lot. I think, but the baat ye hai ki Pakistan studies, it's something that's so fundamentally tied to your identity, your know who you are. Okay, almost when you're critically thinking about those things, people do feel personally attacked.
Right.
Or personally, you know, it pinches. And I get that. It's very natural. आपको पूरी जिंदगी एक चीज पढ़ाई गई and suddenly you're like, you know, that might not be true.
Yeah.
Or that is very limited. Obviously, it's something that will sting. So there are students, you know, who they do get very charged. But I think the entire point of that course is then to engage with that. You know, where is that emotion coming from? How can you reconcile that with what is being taught? And also re-anchor it to saying, you know, we just because you're critical of Pakistan doesn't mean you hate it. You are just critically appreciating what has happened and what is currently happening. You're not critical of the country. That doesn't mean you hate it. In fact, you are engaged with your country. That's why you're willing to think about these things. Otherwise, you wouldn't. It's the same thing as, I think James Baldwin said, "Ki I love America. That's precisely why I criticize it." And I think Pakistan, it's not just the content that you're teaching, but you must have noticed it also on social media lately, which is there is a very particular way of thinking about the past and the present in Pakistan. But you know, all those straw man arguments वगैरह, मेरे लिए the thing that I've also struggled with is कि जिस तरह Pak studies Pakistan में पढ़ाई जाती है, it inculcates a very particular way of thinking. For example, black and white.
Yeah.
ये है तो ये है. There is very little room for complexity. There is very little room for nuance. And everything is just in neat boxes. That's it. I think if you teach Pakistan studies at a higher level in a different way, it impacts that fundamental level of thinking, which we often see these days.
So then the state mandated thing, Pakistan studies, I think this was maybe Zia ke time ka thing कि Pak studies and Islamiyat need to be taught at higher education. So is there no like state sponsored curriculum? Because like how are you able to teach this? कोई पूछ नहीं रहा कि ये LUMS में क्या पढ़ा रहे हैं?
Yeah, LUMS ko, I mean, it's always trending on Twitter, kuch na kuch ho hi raha hota hai, but I think one of the good things about it, no matter what's happening, is that it does give you the space to teach, you know, things that are critical. I think the administration really supports you in that. Besides that, generally the environment that's cultivated over there is that, especially humanities or social sciences, make you know, there will be days in which you feel uncomfortable, but you voice that out. Right? There is a point to all of this being taught. We should have critical debates. There was this kid in my class who said, you know, ma'am, aapki class mein, why is it that in every session we are critically thinking about the state? You know, state har wo galat nahi hoti. And I actually thought about that, and I told them at the end of the semester that it was a deliberate, conscious decision on my part to make this classroom a space which does not reflect state-sanctioned narratives, because as Pakistanis, you are bombarded by them throughout your life. Yeah. Whether that's in textbooks, whether that's in magazines, whether that's on media, films, TV serials, posters. So this is one of those rare spaces that sort of thinks about it without just digesting it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, that I think LUMS gives you a lot of support for teaching certain things, which might not be usually taught. For example, Pakistan studies ke baare mein. So there is administrative support that I think helps create this and maintain this space.
Yeah, yeah. UK, there is generally in the time that I spent in Pakistan, which was like O levels onwards, बहुत एक but even in like education to छोड़ो, even in social and family sort of interactions, there's a big vibe of don't ask questions. सही है, ज़्यादा critique ना करो, especially when it comes to things like religion and history, where the questions
Yeah.
might not even be leading towards a negative sort of conclusion. They might just be in the pursuit of
Yeah.
further logic. But क्योंकि अगले के पास logic
Yeah.
नहीं है, तो automatically shut it down. Asking questions is wrong. And
Yeah.
this is so that's what I was wondering. So when you move abroad, what is that experience like for you when you go to Colombia?
In terms of studying South Asia, or just generally?
Both.
I think Colombia जाके मुझे काफी disconnect feel हुआ था because that's when I realized the importance of situating what you're studying. Colombia में जाके,
What does
they
that
have a
mean?
great program.
Situating what you're studying.
So, I just felt that the way that they teach South Asia in Colombia, for example, it feels very disconnected to what's happening in South Asia.
Right.
Which might be a conscious decision because obviously everything that happens in South Asia is very contentious. On the one hand, you have Modi, on this hand, you have everything else. I just felt that there was a disconnect in Colombia between what is being taught about South Asian past and what is happening currently. Because in my mind, they're very connected with each other. You can't have one without the other. I mean, for instance, you cannot explain Modi's rise without actually tracing the lineage of Hindutva as an ideology.
Right.
Which has been there since a very long time.
Yeah.
Similarly, if you're teaching anything about Pakistan, I just feel like you need to situate those conversations in the present, even when you're talking about the past. It's like, theek hai, Pakistan was made this way, structurally it was very centralized. It is still a pertinent thing. Right, it's not a relic. I felt like South Asia was little bit taught as a relic in Colombia, as opposed to how I had been taught about South Asia in LUMS. Achha. Which is that everything about the past was connected in some way. We see that happening in Pakistan right now.
Right.
This is the historical background to
Right.
it. So what this for me was a little jarring. That's when I realized that there is a lack of context when you're studying South Asia abroad. Obviously, South Asia bahar padho, usme bade masle hain ki South Asia essentially means India. So you have to fight for conversations in which Pakistan or Sri Lanka or other countries are there. But I felt there is no connection to the present. Kuch bhi nahi ho raha. Pakistan mein reh ke, when I'm teaching Pak studies, I make sure that they should know that this is not something that's in history. It is happening right now. Yeah. Even if it's not happening the same, it is still there. Right. This is what makes that history important. That's why you need to study it. Well, now what's the point? Right. Matlab ke, otherwise it's just a story. Yeah, it's just something, it's a historical artifact that you're studying. क्या चाहिए था? हाँ, and आज अब तो no connection to real life. एक ज़माने में कभी ये बात हुई थी, and study it as a story, and that's the end of it. Yeah. Khair, then you come back to Pakistan now. But did Colombia change your perspectives in any way about what you had learned thus far? Because it seems like LUMS was not as walled off a situation as perhaps other places might be कि फिर कोलंबिया जाके लोगों का दिमाग फट जाए कि अच्छा ये तो मैंने कभी सोचा ही नहीं था. You were already on that critical thinking path जाने से पहले. And Colombia might be less advanced than you would have expected when you got there. But what was that experience like before you came back, like overall? I had a great time at Columbia, even though it was most of it was during the pandemic. Lekin I think mujhe खास करके masters में you never really have a moment of revelation. This has changed my mind. Right. It has opened the world to me. I think those moments usually occur in undergrad. That's a very formative thing. But I would credit Columbia for really training me in the field of history, either through, how to read the archive, other methodological tools, and also just thinking. I think undergrad mein, ye badi tendency hoti hai ki whenever you're reading a text, you just have to criticize it. That's just the examination. कि इस author ने ये नहीं किया, ये नहीं किया, ये नहीं किया. I remember I had a professor, Dr. Mana Kia, and she, in the very first session, told us, you can't just criticize something and say that's analysis. You have to appreciate it. You have to see it in a different way. किसी ने झक मार के तो नहीं बुक लिखी ना 20 सालों में, तो कुछ ना कुछ तो है. Look for that. And I think those things really trained me also for teaching.
Acha.
For example, leading seminars, etc. So I think the rigor on the training end was very strong at Columbia. But I think in terms of content and learning, I was well prepared to engage with all of that grad school mein.
Sahi. So then you come back. Was teaching always the plan?
Always.
Acha. Oh shit. Okay.
Even though I was a sort of student who never spoke up in undergrad, I never did class participation.
Right.
I always had public speaking anxiety. And my professors would also be like, you can't go to grad school if you don't speak.
Right.
But I think it's just something I wanted to do, and I sort of learned on the job. Even delivering a lecture to 70 students, in a class and everything. So that was the plan, although I was very unsure how well I would do it. But I think the good thing is it's been a learning process for me also. In terms of not just being able to speak to a class, but also navigate stuff, manage students, how to also tailor your content. For example, Park Studies LUMS may only freshmen and sophomores take. That's too early a level for you to, for example, talk about issues that might be too complex, that they're not yet trained for.
Right.
So tailoring that content while, sort of maintaining that line, you don't have to just feed them everything, but ask them to critically think about it. Tailoring that content, making a syllabus, so on and so forth. So I learned on the job how to do all of that.
Acha. So, chalo, we've talked about how it is teaching people now and how you got here. तो फिर पाकिस्तान के अभी हालात, करंट सोशल मीडिया हालात के बारे में बात करते हैं. Generally, people on the internet, my big problem with people on the internet is that they seem to be unaware of things that I would have considered to be recent historical facts. एक तो चलो ये बात है कि आप स्कूल में you're not interested. दूसरी चलो ठीक है, there is a state sponsored narrative that everyone, if there is a state sponsored narrative, it's likely that many people will fall under it. चलो ठीक है, वो भी सही है. But people in Pakistan seem to be very siloed in their own understanding of history of their particular like community, family, mohalla. And every event, it seems, which if you have that connection to भाई ये history में भी हमारे होता है and देखो आज भी ऐसे ही हो रहा है, every such event, regardless of the frequency of major events in a person's life, seems to be a major surprise to people कि ये कैसे हो सकता है. And whereas I do not consider myself to be very highly educated at all, but I'm like, ये तो होता ही है ना, this is what happens. But everything, at least on the internet, is a surprise to people. Do you think, and this also ties into my other perhaps baseless theory about why people don't want to criticize and question, is that कि पाकिस्तान के हालात तो कभी अच्छे थे नहीं in terms of financial, economic ये वो. So there seems to be this big vibe के यार छोड़ो ना, क्या कौन सोचे इस बारे में, अभी अगले दिन का तो सोचो. And you're so caught up in your daily मसले मसाइल कि you're like, अब मैं ये भी सोचूंगा पूरा मुल्क is in a mess. कौन इतना दिमाग लगाए. So why do you think people are so generally disconnected despite perhaps knowing historical events?
I think to some extent, I would say that some of them do know, but that understanding becomes a casualty of political polarization, which is that you know, but there is a narrative you choose to stick to.
Yeah.
Right. Other, I would definitely say that there is a lack of awareness of the histories that Pakistan has had. So it's two things happening at the same time, which leads to everything is a surprise, or as the language goes these days, which is everything is unprecedented, right? मेरे लिए काफी just as you were saying was very, मैं बहुत हैरान हुई थी इस बात पे कि quite frankly, yes, there are things that are happening right now which are unprecedented, but most of it really is not. It really isn't. All of this has been happening in Sindh in KPK, in the peripheries like, the Fata was Fata,
Yeah.
Waziristan, Balochistan.
Ah.
So, I mean, if you're saying that it's unprecedented, sure, it might be in the heartland of Punjab. And Punjab ka bhi, I would say heartland, because Okara farmers movement was just what, in 2001? It's not too long ago, right? It's not ancient history.
Yeah.
You had such brutality taking place against landless farmers.
Yeah.
So मुझे नहीं समझ आती कि where is this larger perspective कि मुल्क में तो ये चीजें होती रही हैं. I think that again वही वाली चीज है कि the limited nature of thinking कि if you're saying something that ये unprecedented नहीं है, that means you're minimizing the gravity of it. That's not true. I mean, honestly, I don't see what point exceptionalizing this movement serves when you can point out कि यार पाकिस्तान में ये सदियों से हो रहा है. It is so bad that it's been happening for such a long time, and this will go on unless you actually see that pretty much any kind of people in this country have been affected by it. Except उस वक्त, the labels of state narrative were used कि ये terrorists हैं. Okada farmers को terrorist कहा गया था भाई. I mean, they were forcibly divorced from their wives. All of this is recent history.
Yeah.
So, I think if you call it precedented, that means you denying that this is serious. No, it's precisely to connect it to similar struggles in Pakistan that have been taking place, honestly, since 1948.
I
You
feel
can't just
recently
exceptionalize something.
हाँ, पिछले 20-25 साल में ऑल्सो यू वुड थिंक कि इतने सारे हमारे न्यूज़ चैनल्स भी आ गए हैं. पहले तो चलो मीडिया एंड टीवी वाज वेरी स्टेट कंट्रोल्ड एंड स्टेट स्पॉन्सर्ड, तो इतने सारे आ गए. बट इवन देयर आई फील देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ पॉलिटिकल एंड पॉलिटिक्स का डिस्कशन ऑन द न्यूज़ चैनल्स. बट आई फील there's so much noise it's really hard for the regular person to get anything constructive from a news channel. जो अपने घर में जो मैंने देखा है कि मेरे अब्बा टीवी देख रहे हैं और 10 लोग हैं ऑन स्क्रीन 1 घंटे के शो में. तो पहली बात तो ये कि 10 लोग हैं एंड दे ऑल फुली डिसएग्री विद ईच अदर. तो नथिंग कैन बी अचीव्ड इन दिस 1 hour.
That's deliberate, rating.
हाँ, सब एक दूसरे पे चीखते हैं एंड एवरीवन व्यूइंग इज लाइक माय गाय आउट ऑफ दीज 10 पीपल वो सही बात कर रहा है, बाकी सब जहन्नुम जा रहे हैं. एंड खत्म हो गया शो आपका. एंड दैट्स ऑल ऑफ इट. सो देयर इज नो like analysis of ये हालात क्यों हो रहे हैं, what is the real reason behind it, कौन मिला हुआ है, what is the historical perspective. I don't think that's happening on any mass scale के लोग वो देख के शायद सीख लें. चलो स्कूल में नहीं सीख रहे, आमतौर पे नहीं सीख रहे. And that I think perhaps because that's a ratings thing like you mentioned कि वो that's not bringing in the ad money because people want to see fights. तो वो एवेन्यू भी बंद हो जाता है. तो people just end up not knowing stuff and therefore then everything is a surprise. जैसे अभी की बात कर लें तो what's been happening in Pakistan in the past few weeks, months, whatever is कि इमरान खान को आर्मी ने लगाया. I think that's inarguable perhaps in a way कि आर्मी के सपोर्ट से वो इलेक्ट हो गए. 3 साल गुजरने के बाद the other parties got together and they had him kicked out, vote of no confidence वगैरह. अब उस पे आप कहते हैं कि फॉरेन कंस्पिरेसी थी, ये था वो सब चले अपनी जगह, बट प्रोसीजर के थ्रू ही गेट्स किक्ड आउट. आई थिंक एट दैट टाइम इमरान खान वाज लाइक आर्मी तो मेरे साथ है, आर्मी कंट्रोल्स एवरीथिंग इन पाकिस्तान, तो आर्मी विल नॉट अलाउ दिस, बट द आर्मी डिड अलाउ दिस. Historically, I think people do not appreciate that the Pakistani army is not beholden to any one political party. In fact, वो तो उनके साथ तो जो भी they're just looking to further their aims. A controversial statement could be that they don't want any one political party to become too powerful, like People's Party, OG People's Party के ज़माने में जो हुआ था. तो they keep propping up alternatives. Muslim League उनके साथ आई थी, MQM, APMSO वहाँ से आया था. I think Jamaat-e-Islami, JUI, Student Federation was against the People's Party, Street Power in the 80s. And PTI also, because PTI तो election से पहले भी कोई 20-30 साल से इमरान खान था उसमें, but going nowhere. But when all the others ran out, तो ये आ गए. फिर उसके बाद अब क्या हुआ, अच्छा इमरान खान अब लड़ रहे हैं अपनी. This is a summary for someone who is Pakistani and yet doesn't know what's happening. I don't know who this is for, but setting the stage. फिर ये हुआ कि इमरान खान के खिलाफ अमेजिंगली को 150 केस हो गए, which I find to be a hilarious amount of cases against any one person. के मतलब वो हाई अचीवर, शदीद हाई अचीवर इमरान खान. Recently, Imran Khan gets arrested, which is, I think, a big move, an unprecedented move for the PTI. हंगामे हुए,
Yeah.
हालात खराबी हुई, आर्मी के उस पे. Is this? I don't even think this is the first, but in recent history, this is perhaps the first time symbols of military power have been vandalized or something like that. ये तो है ना.
Hmm.
I don't remember
I
seeing
think
this.
if there was ever a similar reputational crisis that the Pakistani army had, it had to be in 1971.
Yeah.
But masla ye कि when you're stretching these flat lines of drawing parallels to 1971, you also disregard very important developments that have taken place. 71 May, there was no social media.
Yeah.
Social media newspapers were censored.
Yeah.
Simply did not know the scale of what the army was doing in East Pakistan. Even after that, Bhutto, he tried to rehabilitate the image of the army because you had to. I mean, you can't have a country without an army, right? Especially when you had half of the country taken away, it's emerged to be a new nation state.
Yeah.
I think if there was ever a reputational crisis of this sort, it was in 1971, but it was very quickly papered over. But मुझे नहीं लगता उस वक्त भी I don't think this ever happened, which is कि people just even attacking शोहदा के memorials.
Yeah.
100% that's unprecedented. The rage that took place
Yeah.
recently,
Yeah.
attacking their, the memorials, the statues, the Corps Commander's house, that has not happened before.
Right. And also, I mean, it's maybe I don't think इतना कोई surprise होने वाली बात है, because if there is this sort of riot or a protest happening, it's a clear, established thing कि उसके अंदर आ भी जाते हैं like troublemakers who are there just for the hell of it कि चलो भाई वो कर लो, and then लोग उसमें direct हो जाते हैं because that sort of rage needs somewhere to go. तो वो एक दफा किसी ने शुरू कर दिया तो सब पीछे फिर कोई मोड़ लेके भाग रहा है, कोई किसी की किचन से
100%.
कढ़ाई ले गया, all of that stuff. Which was funny to watch, but उस वक्त भी देखते हैं like यार इसके साथ बहुत बुरा होने वाला है इस बच्चे के साथ.
मुझे तो I was watching those videos, even जो कोर में वाले थे, मुझे था कि खुदा के वास्ते अपनी शक्ल कवर कर लो. I was shocked कि either some of these people genuinely believed that they could dislodge the military from this disproportionate amount of attacking all of this, or they simply did not have a historical overview. The reason the army has reached this place is precisely because they are a terror or a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
They will not just take this, happening and just, be like, okay, we're out of politics. कुछ ना कुछ तो होना था, वो भी इस scale का. And I was just surprised, most of them actually did not have their faces covered. And that's what's used right now.
Yeah. तो खैर वो बहुत सारी राइट्स हुए, फिर आर्मी ने जाहिर है बहुत जूते मारे सबको, जो कि इवेंचुअली होना था. And they are at the end an army and they have fought wars with real terrorists and stuff. तो ये तो this is just like a bunch of people on the street, बेचारों को जिनको पता भी नहीं कि what are they really achieving here. खैर वो सब हो गया. And now it seems over the past 1 week, बहुत सारे PTI log have been in and out of jail and in and out of discussions, and the party is being effectively dismantled through whatever, intimidation, threat, whatever. So it's also very smart because Imran Khan to jail se hoke वापस आ गया, ठीक है. And a big thing that I've seen in mob stories or mafia stories is कि mafia में ना, it's a great way for the police to dismantle it कि you arrest everybody but the main guy, ठीक है. And everybody else who gets arrested is like यार मैं तो इसको follow कर रहा था, तो why is he still out and मुझे जूते पड़ रहे हैं. तो they're like ठीक है छोड़ो. Fair. So I don't know if that's what they're doing. I'm not equating anybody with anything here. तो इस सब में बहुत messages आए कि भाई बड़ा unprecedented, और I shared a text with you जो कि मुझे भी आया था कि बस बंगाली जो थे वो सही कह रहे थे about this, and people are like, now I know what they felt like in 1971. The same people who 5 years ago were like, how dare you criticize the Pakistan army. ठीक है. तो मैं तो उन पे इस पे भी हैरान हूँ कि वो इतनी जल्दी आप इतना फ्लिप हो गए. आप उस वक्त भी वही हिस्ट्री थी, अभी भी वही हिस्ट्री है. You knew everything then, you just chose not to believe it. So how's that been? Have you had these discussions in your class yet?
So my classes actually, I remember I was taking the exam of a section when the arrest happened. And I think the first thing that was on anyone's mind in Lahore was, how do we get home?
Right, of course.
My semester had actually ended, and I wish I had a
Ah,
chance to maybe talk about these things.
yeah,
एक अगर class और होती. But I actually received emails from a couple of students who were like, during class we actually didn't really see a point to what we were studying, but we actually do now.
yeah,
And we've had acquaintances who have been arrested, others we don't know where they are. So it has brought into perspective what we learned in this course.
yeah, yeah,
But I think मेरे लिए social media has been a very interesting place to be while this was happening,
yeah,
because with PTI supporters, I mean, I've had this issue, and I also, I tweeted it about इसके बारे में कि just because people are seeing कि यार एक साल पहले क्या मुख्तलिफ था, 1971 उससे भी था जो भी था, you can't just gloss over all of that
yeah,
and then ask the same people that you were very much vehemently against and attacked on the internet, and just say, you should be supporting us, right? Because that is the elephant in the room,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
इतने लोगों ने आर्मी को जब कहा, जब पश्तून तहफ़्फ़ुज़ movement हुई and what not, you would be sort of deluged with these abuses, you're anti-state, ISPR को attack किया जा रहा होता था, so on and so forth.
yeah,
At least acknowledge it. And I know
yeah,
some of them are saying, no, trolling is not the same thing as what's happening right now. Nobody's making that equation.
yeah,
We're just saying, is your flip a result of actually seeing that the army, both in the past and the present, has been wrong to interfere, even while they supported Imran Khan, or is it just because, it's just a soured relationship?
yeah, yeah,
And I at least acknowledge that, bhai, we were wrong in the past. It doesn't take more than that. We were
yeah.
wrong. That's it.
Yeah, there's no introspection, it seems. There's only just an immediate reaction to अभी क्या हो रहा है. And हम तो गलत नहीं थे, अब सारे हालात बदल गए.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I was seeing the PTI account, I think officially tha, which was tagging Malala, ki,
अच्छा,
why are you not speaking up?
अच्छा.
And I was just astounded that, bhai, you guys have been, at least most of your online supporters have been very anti-Malala since a while.
Yeah.
So make it
Yeah.
make
उसका क्या हुआ?
sense.
हाँ, उसका क्या
How is
हुआ?
it that you're asking her to support you while not even acknowledging your stance?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. नहीं, and I think PTI का एक the problem or whatever their USP पाकिस्तान में बड़ा इस्तेमाल करते हैं, देसीज also generally. PTI का USP तो ये भी था ना कि we are not the other people. ठीक है, that's why you should vote
Yep.
first. That was my biggest question about भाई इमरान खान को क्यों वोट दे रहे हैं. The only argument was कि he's not भुट्टो और he's not a शरीफ and वो तो सारे हैं ही corrupt और ये वो. I was like अच्छा
हाँ.
ठीक है, but he has no experience. So what is the guarantee कि अच्छा हमने इनको elect कर दिया and he's not going to screw everything up, which arguably perhaps he did. तो चलो but that argument really is still in PTI वालों का, that क्या कह सकते हैं entitlement कि भाई if you don't support us you hate Pakistan, and still तो आर्मी हमें सपोर्ट नहीं करी तो अब आर्मी
Sad.
भी एंटी पाकिस्तान है.
But I think मेरे लिए जो shocking था was कि a bunch of PTI supporters just tagged me. You remember that tweet? कि, if you're not equating what's happening right now with what happened in 1971,
Yeah,
that essentially means you support what's happening. That's
yeah,
it.
yeah,
You
yeah.
support whatever is
हाँ,
happening right now. You have to support it, or you think कि ये तो बिल्कुल है ही नहीं. I
हाँ,
mean, मुझे भी इस बात पे हैरानी होती है कि भाई ये क्या? What kind of thinking is this?
yeah.
It has to be more complex and nuanced. It's not the same thing.
Yeah, क्योंकि हमने 3-4 दफा 1971 का जिक्र किया है. 1971 I feel like was almost like a छोटू सा Holocaust level event for the Bengali population, based on
Yep.
what उस
Yep.
जमाने के जो boys थे हमारे, what they did. I mean पाकिस्तान में I remember मैं सिटी स्कूल में था O levels में. City school Gulshan in Karachi, so not even a burger city school. And we had like a defense day और वहाँ कुछ लोग आए थे. I think city school has some military connections as well. पाकिस्तान में तो everything does. खैर तो वो आए थे शायद 23 मार्च था ये क्या था, एंड वेरी क्लियरली ना हमने कहा था कि भाई आप कुछ सवाल पूछें इनसे बिफोर हैंड. जब वो आएंगे हमारे गेस्ट तो आप इनसे पूछ लें किसी भी जंग के बारे में, except for 1971, because obviously that was a unfortunate defeat or whatever. And the only thing that I knew about 1971 from my school textbooks was that बंगाली जो थे वो इंडिया के साथ मिल गए. अच्छा, उन्होंने लिखा था हाँ भुट्टो लॉस्ट द इलेक्शन मगर भुट्टो डिडंट एग्री, एंड देन
हाँ.
सिविल वॉर हो गई. सही, इन वेरी लाइक
Hmm.
क्लिनिकल टर्म्स के अनरेस्ट एंड स्टफ लाइक दैट हैपेंड. जिस तरह लोग कहते हैं ना कि फलस्तीनी मर रहे होते हैं इसराइल में, सो देयर लाइक यू नो अ रॉकेट हिट द बिल्डिंग, तो हु फायर्ड द रॉकेट, ये कभी नहीं. फिर उसके बाद हुआ कि
Exactly. Yeah.
हाँ, इंडिया से दोस्तियां कर ली उन्होंने, और इंडिया तो तैयार बैठा था क्योंकि इंडिया तो पाकिस्तान का
Hmm.
दुश्मन है. और ये हुआ वो हुआ, एंड देन हमारे 90,000 या 50,000 फौजी जो हैं वो सरेंडर्ड. वेरी सैड, वेरी अनफॉर्चुनेट, और सब कुछ खत्म
Hmm.
हो गया. बट between these events there is so much shit that happened in terms of
Yeah.
what was done to the population. कोई जिक्र नहीं है
Yeah.
इसका at any level. And I think people think कि यही हुआ है जो पीटीआई बॉयज
Hmm.
के साथ हो रहा था, सड़क पे डंडे पड़ गए, अरेस्ट हो गए, वहां भी यही हुआ था, but it was so
हाँ.
much worse. Do you have like a quick
Yeah.
summary of what you would tell somebody कि bro क्या हुआ था?
I think the way that I, for example, teach this in class is that usually I teach them something that was about the Bengali conception of Pakistan, which is in the lead up to partition,
Yeah.
which is very rich in understanding, very, very, I would say, even beautiful. Pak Bangla ka concept tha and everything else. And then I move on to, what were Mujib's 6 points? And for example, what
Okay.
place were they coming from? For example, if he was demanding a separate militia or paramilitary force for East Pakistan, what was the cause for that? Because अक्सर जो लोग कहते हैं ना कि मुजीब के 6 points were a hidden agenda for independence, उसमें ये बात है कि he wanted a separate currency and he wanted a separate army. There are very concrete reasons for that. Right? Number one, 1965 में East Pakistan was left very, very exposed. हमारे सारे defenses West Pakistan में थे, and they felt vulnerable.
Yeah.
Second was the fact that despite being the majority of the population, Bengalis were hardly 9 to 13% of the army. Not just that, but very low-lying soldiers, not high position at all. That was one reason for that. Currency वाली चीज भी ये था कि भाई West Pakistan was exploiting East Pakistan so much. I mean, this is a very famous quote कि when Mujib landed in Islamabad once, he said I can smell the jute fields of Chittagong over here. Which is, you've used everything we had to build this modern literacy capital. So contextualizing, where did that movement come from? 6 points was not that they're saying we're going to be a separate nation state.
No.
The last law that led to it was absolutely Operation Searchlight. You are conducting a military operation against your own people.
Yeah.
Right? They had exhausted all the means, and sure, I hold Bhutto at fault too, but usually in my class, when bachche kehte hain, Bhutto was at fault. It happened because of him. Sure, I think he was very power hungry. He wanted to be in power and all that. But I also keep reminding them that Bhutto was not in power at that time.
Yeah.
Yahya and Bhutto were.
Yeah.
Right? They were the ones calling the shots. So people can be responsible, but perhaps not equally.
Yeah.
You have to know where to portion that blame. But I think one of the things that consistently missed out in the narratives about 1971, which my grad school research was about, कि बंगालियों के बारे में जो भी ideas थे ना, they were very, very racist.
Oh yeah, भूखे बंगाली
काले हैं, अभी भी होते हैं. ये तो
Yeah.
पाकिस्तान में अभी लोग बंगाली काले हैं, मछली खाते हैं,
2 टके की वैल्यू नहीं है. The taka is worth more than the rupee now.
Exactly. I mean, well, so those racist stereotypes and the fact that they were very much infused with the fact कि इनकी nature ही खराब है, ये by nature हिंदू हैं, ये मुसलमान. I mean, Feroz Khan Noon, I think in the 1960s, he openly issued a statement कि बंगालियों को तो अपनी मुर्गियां में से हलाल करनी नहीं आती. To which Maulana Bhashani replied, should we lift our lungis to prove that we're Muslims? What will it take for Pakistan to realize that हम भी मुसलमान हैं? We are part of the nation state. This is happening in the 60s. This is not even 1971. There was a very widespread racism against them that was weaponized to enact this violence on them.
Yeah.
It did not just come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
आप politically उनको neglect कर रहे थे, you were denying them power, you were oppressing them, you were economically exploiting them, and all of that was very well seeped in that racism. I examined more than a dozen memoirs and autobiographies of the generals who participated in 1971 or led it. If you read them, you will find such common tropes about the Bengalis. Unstable hain, psychologically they crave attention, they're very mother attached, they're from an inferior race.
Yeah.
All of that was used to show, to also, I think, in some ways it guided the operation कि हम तो इनको easily defeat कर लेंगे.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also they deserve this.
Yeah, they are not really Pakistanis.
Hmm.
Because the last step in all of this was, number one was to show that they are a different race. If you read Ayub's diaries, Ayub says that West Pakistan has the best mixture of the races that existed in this region. But the Bengalis are the downtrodden races. They've always been inferior. They've always been ruled by others, and they've never had any taste of freedom. This
Such
is
British
him writing.
concepts, if you think about it.
Yeah, and he's writing this in his public autobiography. Ayub ki private diaries, which were published, I think, 50 years after he died, which was what he wanted it to be published. They have a lot more. He hated the Bengalis. And it's not just that it was a personal dislike for them, that dictated the policies he had towards them too.
Yeah.
So the first step was, of course, the fact that Bengalis are racy mukhtalif and they're inferior.
Yeah.
The second was just pathologizing them कि unstable हैं, ये पागल हैं, झूठे हैं, मक्कार हैं, इनको trust नहीं करना चाहिए. The third was, of course, the fact that you sort of reinvent those stereotypes in the nationalist framework, which is the two-nation theory. Bengalis are essentially inherently Hindu. They are partially Pakistani. Because they're inadequately Muslim, they're partially Pakistani. And declaring them traitors or enemies from that was just a short step.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've done that, you otherize them, right? So dehumanization, it doesn't take long.
I think othering wala jo concept hai, that is so, I feel it is so fundamental. Again, this is not based on any study I've done, but just based on what people talk about, there is so much exceptionalism built into the Pakistani narrative. Putting us on this pedestal of being the best people in the region, और देखने में भी हम खूबसूरत, और best Muslims in the world, और सब हम ये हैं, और इसलिए हमें इंडिया से भी अलग होना था क्योंकि वो तो बर्दाश्त ना करते हैं हम इतने अच्छे हैं, और even उनके Muslims want to be part of Pakistan, and all of this stuff that, and it becomes this, how liberals have this self-defeating tendency to out-liberal each other, और उसी में बात खत्म हो जाती है. पाकिस्तान में भी ये कि who is the perfect तरीन पाकिस्तानी person, अगर आप वो नहीं है तो automatically you're out. And it's these unachievable goals कि अगर if you're born Bengali, और अगर आप गोरे नहीं हैं और आप पहले हिंदू थे तो आप हो ही नहीं सकते, तो don't even try because you suck. And it's sort of like this invented caste system that we have of our own कि भाई अगर आप गोरे सुन्नी मुसलमान पंजाबी नहीं है तो but नीचे रहो ना फिर, know your place. And that is in people's minds आज तक. जितनी भी आप एजुकेशन कर लें, और you get inclusivity in fashion and all of that bullshit, वो change नहीं हो रहा. And I feel that's also leading to this Bangladesh situation and social media discourse today. We're superior and perfect, and why are these people even arguing with us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think baat ye कि it's very uncomfortable to revisit even 1971 when you actually see कि पाकिस्तान ने किया क्या था. And the thing that I believe in is कि the power that critical histories give back to you is what state-sanctioned histories take away from you.
Yeah.
State-sanctioned histories are histories with a capital H. ये हुआ, ये cause था, ये consequence है. It was an Indian conspiracy. Bengalis betrayed us. Loss of fall of Dhaka, whatever.
Yeah.
The thing that critical histories ask of you is that none of this was really inevitable until it was made inevitable.
Yeah. Yeah.
You denied them their democratic mandate, which had been preceded by years of neglect and oppression. So it was not really inevitable. अक्सर क्योंकि ये भी narrative है कि अलग तो होना ही था, इतने differences थे. Wings ये लगते, ये तो होना ही था. I think when you start thinking, and obviously that's painful also, you lost, I won't say lost, but you yourself actually separated yourself from half the country.
Yeah.
By your own actions. So history is not inevitable. But itni usme, there's this such discomfort in actually seeing what you did. It's better to go for the easier, neater narrative ki Indian conspiracy thi. And I think I'm not sure to what extent you're aware कि जब 50th anniversary थी 1971 की, I think 2 साल पहले, ISPR had actually produced a spate of videos and films and dramas.
I saw that there was a show where somebody was doing like a fake Bengali accent type or 1971. I was like, holy shit. ये तो बहुत ही.
And what's funny is कि पाकिस्तान में अभी बंगाली हैं. They're stateless. It's not even that proud.
या
इतनी इजीली उनको निकाल दिया हुआ हिस्ट्री से। आई मीन कराची में देयर
कराची में,
सो
या बिग बिग
मेनी
कम्युनिटी,
Bengalis। एग्जैक्टली।
या
इट्स जस्ट दैट अगर कुछ करना भी है तो एक थोड़ा सा अभी भी वो चीजें ना डार्कर फेस करके कि ये बंगाली है।
या या
खेल खेल में जिसमें सजल अली थी, दैट इंटायर फिल्म ख्वाब टूट जाते हैं, आई थिंक वो जो फिल्म जो प्रोड्यूस की गई थी, एंड आल्सो देयर वाज एन एंटायरली न्यू नैरेटिव that was created even about things like sexual violence that occurred in 1971. इस तरह की चीजें, and that's why I feel like 1971 is still such a sore point for the state narrative. Which is why they keep creating narratives around it कि ये film ये पता हो, people should be reminded because it was a very very dark chapter in our history,
या
and you know who's accountable for it,
हाँ,
except they were not held accountable.
आर्मी का ये भी है ना कि देयर इमेज हैज टू बी at least enforced as perfect कि
Yep.
no false, because politicians तो आपको पता है बुरे होते हैं, और
हाँ।
पॉलिटिशियन तो करप्ट हो जाते हैं, एंड आपको पता है यू
हाँ।
कांट रियली ट्रस्ट अ पॉलिटिशियन बिकॉज ये देखिए इतने सारे करप्ट पॉलिटिशियंस।
Yeah.
तो वी आर द वन यूनाइटिंग फोर्स that at the end of the day, sleep well, Pakistan army is awake, गाड़ियों पे sticker
Yeah.
लगे हुए हैं, that sort of vibe. So you can't have that be your required aim, because the army, if there's like mass uprising, the army just can't go and shoot everybody. वो तो फिर
Yeah.
खत्म हो जाएगा scene.
हाँ।
So you can't have the perfect image along with uncomfortable histories. So it's better to rewrite uncomfortable histories or just exclude them from the mass narrative. थोड़े थोड़े बच्चे इधर उधर पढ़ रहे हैं, ठीक है, उनको ना कहीं कभी
हाँ।
जाने नहीं देना हमने.
हाँ।
So it makes sense why this is happening, and also the ISPR is obviously a huge media wing, or हर साल गाने भी आते हैं और सब कुछ होता है. So I suppose that's why people are easily lured into the thing कि हाँ बस वो थोड़े से बैड सीन हुए थे और देखें अभी भी थोड़े से बैड सीन हो रहे हैं.
That's it.
They don't understand how bad, like I think it was like 4 million people is the figure that I've seen somewhere were killed or something. And
They can test it. I mean, पाक नेशनलिस्ट अकाउंट से ट्विटर पे they're like, इतने नहीं थे।
हाँ,
पर बात ये है कि यार आपने
how many is
100
how many is high enough, or how
yeah,
many?
how many number of people killed does it qualify for it to be bad,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I mean, even if you kill 100 Bengalis,
yeah,
that's bad.
yeah,
It's not, the question, जो narrative जो मुझे बहुत, I find it very curious to see the way it's evolving, which is कि, war crime तो ये थी नहीं. Crimes against humanity, I don't think it requires a number of people killed. It just requires a particular nature of violence,
yeah, yeah,
aimed at extermination on the basis of ethnicity, race, whatever.
yeah,
But वो एक ने तो नहीं मारे, if you read Dead Reckoning by Sharmila Bose, तो वो तो she says, I mean, she still says that Pakistan killed people, but the number is lower.
yeah.
How does that make it fine? It
हाँ,
doesn't.
हाँ, एक मिलियन तो चले, ठीक है ना, फिर वो तो इतना तो आपको करना ही होगा, to
हाँ।
to achieve a certain goal. But yeah, I feel it really, we did an episode थोड़े अर्से पहले ना with वो रोगोनमस जो हैं अम्मार हबीब खान,
हाँ।
and uncle, how uncles are in charge of everything, and the com also wants to be an uncle, and it's just like these uncle sort of proclamations के bro ये तो होता है. So this argument के इतने लोग तो मरे ही नहीं थे, और या इतने तो सोल्जर्स ही नहीं थे, एंड सच अ fucking uncle thing to say with, and बस and then it's enacted, बस अब आप मान लें, don't argue about it, and ऐसा ही होना है. और उसमें आपकी इकोनॉमी भी सड़ गई, एंड पॉलिटिक्स तो चलो whatever, it's a joke anyway, or there's mass delusion amongst the people. You had another point that I don't want to get to. हाँ, critical nonsense, blah blah, university level still taught. So what about the other people in uh, the academic circles? Do they, because I'm sure उसमें भी disagreement तो होगा about this whole critical perspective of viewing Pakistani history. Is there consensus, or is there in the academic circles? Yeah, उसमें भी there's a lot of बहस
I think
मुबाहिसा.
I can only speak for LUMS in this regard, which is that at least humanities or social sciences में जो faculty है, they're all very committed to the sort of education they want to impart. And that has to be critical. You have to, and it's not most about content, but more about, if you don't introduce them to critical histories or critical ways of thinking, that thinking won't evolve. You need that thinking कि अच्छा, nuance होती है. There are gray areas in between. There is complexity. Sometimes there are competing narratives, but that's okay. It's not, you don't really have to pitch tents against each other उस तरह.
Yeah.
So LUMS में I would say कि humanities and social sciences की faculty में there is a very, ample consensus कि this is the right way to impart an undergraduate education to them.
Yeah, I feel like it's uncomfortable, right, to have disagreements, which is partly why people are so prone to just select बस ये one viewpoint है और आप बहस ना करें और बहस करेंगे तो आप बहस itself is wrong.
Yeah.
Do you feel the students that who come through चलो ठीक है, some people वो तो बस आ रहे हैं exam pass करना है और हमने just part of the thing,
हाँ.
let's get it over with, which is चलो ठीक है, fine. Some people are impacted by what they hear, and it's really contrary to the belief system they came in with. Do you think that lasts in people? I don't know if you would have a view to this, but like class khatam ho gayi, then they go out, lumps khatam ho gaya, they go out into the real world. Do you think they hold on to that critical approach, या फिर वो दब जाती है दुनिया में, they're also like छोड़ो यार, fuck it, who cares?
I think for those who remain committed in the class, and you can see it, it's very palpable, they are invested. They are really deeply thinking about stuff. I think they hold on.
अच्छा.
They hold on to it, and I think they build on to it also. कि,
Right.
अच्छा ठीक है, ये हुआ, maybe we should consult these things. Hold on to that critical consciousness कि यार हर चीज you have to see where it's coming from. Even for example, the writing of history, क्यों इस तरह लिखी गई? Why is it that, for example, figures that were not Muslim were erased from our history? Why is it that Fatma Jinnah को characterize मादरे मिल्लत के तौर पे बस किया जाता है? She was an icon in her own right. So they hold on to those things, and I think what I really appreciate in all of them is that they're very well related to what's happening right now too.
Right.
अच्छा आप जो बात कर रही हैं कि how women are represented in history, we see that in media also these days. There's a particular good woman, there's a bad woman, all of that. I think the fact that they're able to make those connections gives me enough indication that they will be carrying on some of the insights that they're taking away from the course.
Yeah, it's hard to forget like the truth once you see it. या तो आपने कभी देखी ना हो. Then ये है कि अच्छा चलें फिर historical, let's predict the future. Let's ask Hafsa Khawaja to predict the future based on your understanding of Pakistani history and then your view of what is currently happening. What is the most likely next set of events you feel will play out? Election होने नहीं होने?
मुझे तो लग रहा है ऐसे नहीं होगा, पर I mean, I hope it happens.
Sure.
I just feel like इस वक्त, for example, I think anyone who's living in Pakistan right now would say the same, कि there is a very almost tangible sense of dread and fear that people are experiencing at the moment. It's not just because everything that has happened, also the reach of what's happened. कि अगर किसी ने protest किया भी है, they're not just the target. Their parents can, even if the parents are like 80 years old.
Yeah.
Their siblings can be picked up, their children can be picked up. You won't know where they go. So I think the fact that terror is something that can impact your parents, the people you love, not just you, I think it's working really well in the establishment's favor to really silence people. I think we can see that on social media also. Most PTI accounts have gone either deactivated or have gone private or have issued apology videos. But uske alawa bhi, I mean, मेरी family, for example, there are people who don't support either side, TML and PUP or PTI, but even they're scared to say just about anything about the army. So it's right now the fear and dread that they've inspired in Pakistan, I think has worked very well. It is working.
Yeah.
So I think which is what just surprises me is that you can't. How do you think this will just be the end of your problems for the army, right? You can't just pick up people. You can't threaten them and then expect that rage is finished. It's still
क्योंकि
there.
this
It's just
happened
private.
in Karachi, because कराची में जब MQM का ज़माना था, and MQM उस ज़माने में तो चले आपने बनाई थी कि मुहाजिरों की कोई political voice नहीं है in the 80s and students को होना चाहिए, because obviously the People's Party had much student. फिर वो चलो गुंडागर्दी में पड़ गया, इसमें हो गया, whatever. Then there's MQM really had great slogans and marketing अपनी हमेशा हरकतें उनकी अपनी तरफ, but उनका वो था कि the only party that can take a person from Karachi की सड़क to the Senate is the MQM, real people's party. फिर उनके साथ ऑपरेशन हुए, एक वो अर्ली 90s वाला हुआ, और
हाँ
अर्ली 90s वाला ऑपरेशन डिडंट डिस्ट्रॉय द एमक्यूएम, जैसे नाउ इट्स, अब तो खत्म हो गई है ना, बट अर्ली 90s वाला ऑपरेशन वाज मेसी, और उसमें बहुत सारे बंदे मरे और बहुत सारे लड़के उठाए उन्होंने, ये फॉर एवर रेजेंटमेंट अगेंस्ट द आर्मी, कि ये
या
इन्होंने हम झूठ बोल के हम पे जुल्म किया, बिकॉज नोबडी वांट्स टू एक्सेप्ट कि हाँ जी मेरा बेटा जो था वो उड़ना था, तो चलो
हाँ
ठीक है। एंड उस जमाने वाली एमक्यूएम वाज लाइक, हम तो सारे एजुकेटेड लोग हैं और हम तो डॉक्टर्स हैं और ये वो हम ज्वाइन कर रहे हैं, तो हाउ कैन वी बी अक्यूज्ड ऑफ दीज क्राइम्स, क्राइम्स आर वेरी रियल आल्सो, बट वो रिजेंटमेंट बैठ गई दिल में फॉर
हाँ
एवर। ठीक है, अब वो मुशर्रफ के टाइम पे जाके बदली, बिकॉज मुशर्रफ वाज
हाँ
लाइक आई नीड समबडी, वो ठीक है, बट उसके अलावा तो कोई भी आए जाए, ये वो लाइक ब्रो आर्मी तो है ही ऐसी। एमक्यूएम इज
हाँ
जस्ट अ कराची पार्टी and very clearly branded as a Karachi party by others, by themselves, even when they tried to become the Muttahida Qawmi Movement.
हाँ
PTI is not a Karachi party, ठीक है।
या
एंड इस तरह पीपल्स पार्टी का एक जमाने में था, आर्मी से फटा, बट
हम्म
दे टोन्ड दैट बैक। मुस्लिम लीग का तो सिर्फ मुशर्रफ से फटा था,
हम्म
वो तो एक पर्सनल एक इशू था।
हाँ
दे वर आल्सो जिया का क्रिएशन, ना द पीटीआई इज लाइक अ पैन पाकिस्तान पार्टी, which is
इट इज
also why,
नेशनल
which is
या
also why उसको shut, and they've replaced the MQM in Karachi, not in the street हरकतें, but in terms of vote bank, because MQM तो है नहीं।
या
Now there is a big population which is like, हाँ ठीक है ये प्रोटेस्ट वगैरह जरा गलत हुए, ये वो हुआ, बट द आर्मी बिट्रेड अस। अब उनके
हम्म
दिल में ये बात बैठ गई, वो इमरान खान सेज इज नॉट रॉन्ग कि आइडियोलॉजीज इस तरह नहीं खत्म होती, जितना दबाओगे उतना वो और होगी। सो आई डोंट नो व्हाट द आर्मीज गेम, वो ये होगा कि अभी दबा दो, ये जरा ज्यादा आउट हो गए, आगे जाके
हाँ
इलेक्शन होंगे व्हाटएवर, तो हम उनसे बात कर लेंगे, एंड मानना तो है ही सबको हमारे कहना। इज दैट, यू थिंक दैट्स द प्लान?
आई थिंक लॉन्ग गेम इनकी कोई भी नहीं होती। वन ऑफ द थिंग्स वी ऑलरेडी नो इज के we don't learn their lessons,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Done this with other parties, they that does not end the party, ठीक है, you can,
Every army project has come back to bite them.
that's it, and
Yeah,
this has been happening since what, like 60 70 से ये चीजें political engineering कर रहे हैं, and I feel like this is, they haven't even updated their playbook.
yeah,
That's it. PTI YBCBA, I think nobody can deny that they do have mass level support.
yeah, yeah,
And that's not limited to just one city or one province. People actually do genuinely support the PTI.
yeah, yeah,
And I think with the recent events, a lot of people who were perhaps on the fence, even they're now pro PTI. गलत
yeah,
हुआ है.
yeah,
Whether or not they recognize कि पिछले decades में भी यही होता रहा है, कभी पीपीपी के साथ, एमक्यूएम के साथ, that's another thing. But I don't think the strategy will work कि this is the end of PTI
yeah,
or this is the end of support for Imran Khan and whatever he represents. ठीक है, लोग इस तक बैठ गए हैं. They've been silenced. They're very fearful of their safety and all of that. But that can only go for so long.
mm.
You can't just think कि brutality की उस पे force पे this will continue for the next 30 years.
Because at the back end
Um,
there's also all that economic pressure that's building. So, much of which was
yeah,
being channeled into ये political anger, but वो economic pressure का तो कुछ नहीं हो रहा। तो जिस तरह अरब
हाँ,
स्प्रिंग में हुआ था कि जब लोगों के पास खाना खत्म हो गया था, so that's the tipping point, right? जब आपके पास
हाँ,
खाने को मसला हो जाता है, तो then you're like
yeah,
fuck it, सब जला दो। पाकिस्तान
yeah,
में तो we're not moving away from that point, we're perhaps moving towards it, with general economics plus COVID plus the flood plus climate change. So this isn't like over unless Imran Khan dies. फिर तो चलो, because I don't see the PTI surviving much easily without Imran Khan being there. Because अभी कल
yeah,
election हो जाए and Imran Khan has all these people leave and Imran Khan अकेले election में खड़ा हो जाए, PTI जीत जाएगी.
yep,
So long as he's there, which is also
yeah.
their, I guess, Achilles heel. वे कि अगर इमरान खान गुजर गए, तो खत्म, the dream is over. Please.
Party, yeah.
Yeah. Are you
But I think
concerned?
ये वाली बात even with the pro, I am perpetually concerned.
वो general
Um,
personality trait अपनी तरफ.
नहीं, not even. I think Pakistan has inculcated that trait in me, which is that I am perpetually concerned. वो मीम नहीं है जिसमें आग लगी हुई है, this is
This is
fine,
fine.
but
Yeah.
it's not fine.
Yeah.
I think what people are also ignoring in the recent protests is कि as you said कि जब इस तरह की कोई चीज होती है, all kinds of people join in.
Mm.
You can't discount from that just how bad the economic situation is right now.
Yeah.
People have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Um, people are struggling to put a single meal on their table.
Yeah.
You know, I would openly acknowledge कि I would never say कि हमारी पाकिस्तानी एक टेंडेंसी नहीं होती कि अगर मैं मलिक रियाज नहीं हूँ या मैं मियां मंशा नहीं तो मैं मिडिल क्लास पुअर हूँ. No, I think I, for example, come from a very privileged class.
Yeah,
ठीक है,
yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
मियां मंशा, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean I'm not privileged.
Yeah.
I think it's just Pakistan. I think when you go out Lahore में कभी-कभी भी it feels depressing.
Yeah.
The general atmosphere is depressing. I think left, right, center on a more personal level, I would say in the past few months, in the past year, dozens of friends have just left Pakistan.
Huh.
It almost feels like an exodus कि बस लोग निकल रहे हैं. You
Yeah.
know? That I think is a very stark indicator कि पाकिस्तान के इससे क्या हालात हैं. Or how are people struggling? And also these are people from relatively, privileged classes. They have the cushion.
नहीं, जो बाहर जा रहे हैं, it's not easy to leave,
Absolutely.
Yeah, निकलना भी means you're pretty privileged कि आपकी वो education थी कि आपकी बाहर job लग गई और you could apply
Got
for
that
a
access.
visa. Yeah. तो yeah, खैर. Anything else? I think as always जो भी पाकिस्तानी conversation होती है तुम्हारे साथ, अम्मार के साथ, उमेर के साथ, वो मिस्टर पाकी के साथ, वो एंड में यही होता है कि चलो
यही कर सकते हैं ना, चलो अच्छा चलो फिर
हाँ.
खैर है, अल्लाह देख लेगा, देखी
Yeah.
जाएगी. पाकिस्तान ऐसे ही चलता रहा है. But I think right now what's more pressing is the economic situation, because if they think कि बस लोग चुप होके बैठ जाएंगे while they're enduring all of these pressures, that is just not possible.
Yeah, I think for the first time अभी जब मैं आया था पाकिस्तान January February वाले period में, everyone was just talking about economic halat. And I know people जिनकी who did really well in their life, 10 लाख की तनख्वाहें उनकी ये वो, उन तक को actual they're like हाँ यार हमारी आधी savings जो है वो खत्म हो गई हैं.
Savings or value में they are down. I mean, I feel like there's no point to save right now because there's no value. So it's bad because I mean even things like कि दवाइयाँ नहीं आ रही, for instance. If you go to the market, you need eye drops, you need some very basic things. They're like short हुई नहीं है, course बंद है. That is bad. I mean, people need life-saving medicines. People need so much more. You can't expect that people would just shut down just because they're fearful. Because once, as you said, they reach that point where they're like, सब चीजों को आग लगा दो. There's nothing, you don't really have a stake anymore उस तरह. That's really dangerous. Which I think Pakistan is very quickly nosediving towards.
Yeah. And बहस करवा लो लेकिन लोगों से कि आपने क्रिटिसाइज कैसे किया. ये दिस इज आई थिंक आवर बिगेस्ट नेचुरल रिसोर्स, द बहस की गुंजाइश कि हम जितनी बहस करानी है आप हमें चुप नहीं करा सकते. हम सही हैं, गलत हैं.
डिस्कोर्स जो होता रहा है, जो लोग ट्विटर पे पोस्ट कर रहे थे कि इवन झाड़ू, there's a variety of झाड़ू in Pakistan जो हर घर में यूज होता है.
Right.
Even that's not made in the country. And I was like, what do we make?
Wow.
We only, we're good for behas and everything. We don't make anything.
कुछ साल पहले ना मैं बड़ा हैरान हुआ था to learn कि even चाय is imported. And I was like, why are we drinking it? ये तो हम afford ही नहीं कर सकते. और कराची में तो
addicts, and yet we don't produce it.
And नहा रहे हैं लोग कराची में चाय में. I'm like, ये सब import हो रहा है. Yeah, there was a big thing in the Amar episode, people watching, listening, where he talked about the import ban and how stupid it was because even stuff we make locally depends on imports. And अगर आपने वो import बंद कर दिए तो जो local production थी वो भी बंद हो गई. Great episode that. Before we go, do you have any gin stories?
I wish I did.
Suni sunai, personal, doesn't matter.
Let me think.
A weird thing to say, I wish I did.
I wish I did have a gin story. I love gin stories.
Chalo.
Sometimes you need, I think Pakistan में रह रहे कि you get so tired of the noise and TV पे भी चीखो पुकार हो रही है, nothing's looking up. I love if there was a distraction कि कुछ gin story निकल आए, कुछ और हो जाए. That's what we're all holding on to.
Yeah. जिनों के भी हालात खराब चल रहे हैं. But चलो ठीक है. Do you want people to? Oh, we didn't talk about your article in Dawn that ended up on another publisher's. Chalo, we talk about it once we stop. And do you want people to find you online, send you their questions, comments, accusations?
Yeah, sure. I don't mind. I would love to engage with them.
Twitter is fine?
Yeah, Twitter is fine.
हम डाल देंगे in the something. And ठीक है चलें हफ्सा. Big mistake that you've made by coming on this podcast कि एक दफ़ा आप आ गई हैं तो आप कभी भी आ सकती हैं. अगर आप कभी ना आती तो फिर there was a barrier, but चलो ठीक है, finally. Is this the first time you and I are talking like face to face?
It is. It is
Yeah.
after all those messages and birthday wishes. Yes.
या
It is.
मैंने कल परसों गलती की कि मैंने कहा यार हफ्सा गेव मी अ फ्यू थिंग्स टू टॉक अबाउट ना, तो मैंने ज़रा ज़्यादा स्क्रॉल कर दिया और वो पीछे तक चला, मैंने कहा यार व्हाट इज ये क्या
But that is a podcast episode for another day. That
या
is something, we could talk about
या
that.
या लोकल आर्टिसन मैसेजिंग सर्विस. खैर चलो ठीक है, थैंक यू फॉर वाचिंग, थैंक यू फॉर कमिंग, विल स्टॉप रिकॉर्डिंग. यू नो चले, पाकिस्तान का पीपल कीप सेइंग कि पाकिस्तान का अल्लाह ही हाफिज़, एंड बचपन से आई वाज लाइक this isn't a good thing, but why don't we have a plan? But खैर, okay.